Let's talk about what I think is probably the dumbest video I've ever made, and that would be the Deluxe photo encabulator. And I know this is different from what I normally talk about on my channel, but aside from being totally ridiculous and people asking, what the heck was that? Turbo encabulator, the retro encabulator, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's been known by over the years, has a really long and interesting history that goes back almost 80 years. And so I'll put a link in the description to an article that sums everything up. And it first popped onto my radar about a year and a half ago with a video that was posted online from 1997 or thereabout. And the title of the post was about like, this training video is ridiculous. And I watched it, like many people, thinking that it was legitimate and real and just totally ridiculous. And then about halfway through, I started to have some questions. There are all these little touches, like when the doors open, there's a little squeak. And then what is in that? What is in that door? It's nothing. It's the same thing as this. It's just a bunch of parts glued together that don't really mean anything. And at parts like this, as he's speaking to add emphasis, the camera zooms in very seriously because everything is done so deadpan and so earnest. Squeaky door with just a whole bunch of parts inside. I don't know what these parts are. They don't mean anything. And then one of my favorite performance pieces are the hand gestures to really illustrate what he's talking about, which is so funny. Like, what does that mean? And so maybe it was just sort of like this funny one-off thing that people decided to produce for some reason, but I thought there might be more to it. And so a little bit of Googling sort of led me down the rabbit hole of the encabulator. Basically, this is like a meme since before there were memes, essentially. The first mention of this was a turbo encabulator that was published in an article in, what is it, the Wikipedia page. It was Students' Quarterly Journal in 1944 under the name J.H. Quick. If you saw my video, basically it's the script. That script is that article from 80 years ago with just some changes. I tried to make it more photo based because it would make more sense with my channel. And basically it's just a bunch of technical jargon and techno babble. Most of it's not even real words. But then in 1946, Time magazine thought it was time to get in on the joke, and they published an article that was kind of the same thing, and that reached a lot more people because it was a more popular magazine, and it was sort of a very similar reaction to the video I put out, where some people thought it was hilarious and other people were confused and some people were just angry about it. But then it goes even further. So in 1962, 18 years after it was originally published in the Students' Quarterly Journal, GE, General Electric, said, gee whiz, we want to get in on this. It can't be just Time magazine. And I forget what they called. They published a data sheet. So basically what a big company like General Electric did, especially back in the mid 20th century, was every year they would publish data sheets for everything that they manufactured. And it would just be this big, almost like a catalog, but it's just like spec sheets. And basically it looks exactly like an actual spec sheet for any of their real products, but if you read it, it's the same thing as the script in the video where it just doesn't make any sense. The function says that the turbo encabulator function is to measure inverse reactive current in unilateral phase detractors with display of percent realization. That doesn't mean anything. Those are words.
I know those words, but that sign makes no sense.
The thing with this is in 1962, there wasn't the internet. I don't know if you knew this, but the internet wasn't around then. And so that meant that this didn't have the reach that like a YouTube video or a social media thing would have today. They went through all this work and published it. And I don't know how many people are going through the General Electric data sheets and spec sheets. And so it's like, it's a lot of work for a joke that almost no one is going to get. And to me, that's like my favorite thing in the world, is how much work it takes to do dumb stuff. So now we get into the motion picture side of things. And in 1977, an actor named Bud Haggart, who was basically like the Troy McClure of the time.
Hi, I'm Troy McClure.
And so a lot of people at the time recognized him and his voice because they'd seen him in, corporate training videos and industry specific videos. I guess they're films, they weren't done on video at the time. He had found this and sort of put it together as a script, and he was working on a project for GM. They were doing like a GMC truck commercial or something, and they finished early, and when they were done, he convinced the crew, which is crazy, to stay around and help him perform this encabulator thing. And it's amazing because he delivers it all in one take.
Such an instrument is the turbo encabulator. Now, basically, the only new principle in...
Now this is like the most seriously performed version. That is right until the end when they talk about who the encabulator is for.
I'm sure the government will buy it.
Then you can hear the crew laugh. And again, this was all shot on film, so the amount of work it goes into just creating it, processing it, and then so instead of getting like in trouble for wasting resources, 11 years later, Chrysler hired the same guy to reprise his role again in a video that they actually produced. It wasn't an accidental thing like, hey, we've got extra time, let's work on this.
Work is proceeding on the
He's so earnest
idea of
and just so deadpan. He does a few things I really love. Like right here, he picks up a book and then basically makes up a German title for the book.
Great deal of work. We referred to Dr. David Blumenstein's book, Zeitschrift für Elektrotechnische Statischer Donnerblitzer. That was Blumenstein's 7th volume, I believe.
And then that led to 9 years later, in 1997, Rockwell Automation produced another video for an updated version that instead of being called the Turbo Encabulator was called the Retro Encabulator, and that was the video that I saw that drew me into this wacky world in the first place.
Moreover, whenever fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm.
And from there, little references and nods to the encabulator history have popped up in video games, movies, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff, and I just find it completely hilarious. Now, in making this little behind the scenes video, I found this version, which I had never seen before. This was officially produced by Chrysler and Dodge, talking about the encabulator.
Hi, I'm Bud. I'm
There's
Tony.
our guy. He
Here
has an
at the
assistant
Dodge
this
Division,
time.
Viper Automotive Operations research has been proceeding to develop a line of heavy-duty transmissions and differentials that establishes...
Now they do something interesting here, which is they throw it to this guy.
Thanks, Bud. Now that we know
Who you
how
might
the
recognize
turbo
from the
encabulator
first
works
video I
with a
showed.
Viper GT
So I guess after this, he did his own version of the retro encabulator, not the turbo encabulator, but this has a Dodge Ram out the window, which I believe is clearly a fake window, and that is just a picture of a Dodge Ram. But that is like the one from the movie Twister, and I think those came out in like 1996, and this looks very mid-90s, so my guess is this was like a 1995, 1996 production, and then in 1997, this guy, who I believe his real name is Mike Kraft, he did the retro encabulator video with the squeaky doors. But he's pretty brilliant here, and they've added a lot to the script.
to expose the heart of the turbo encabulator, the magneto-reluctance modial interactor. Since little or nothing is known about the principles involved in...
It went from just a quick article in a niche industry publication to a Time magazine article to a GE spec sheet, data sheet, to like a fun video that was just an actor had a goofy idea, to different iterations of that, to now we've got sets and actors and like plot lines. There's basically like the encabulator cinematic universe is a thing at this point. And then I thought it'd be really funny to make a video about this where I'm saying these things, but the video is exactly like one of my normal videos. It's not deadpan, because my videos aren't serious and deadpan, but it's delivered in the same, you know, this is factual, I want to give you good information, and I want to throw in a couple jokes along the way. And this was in like July, and I thought that would be an awesome April Fool's Day video. I'll keep that in mind for April. But I am very impatient, and July is a very long ways away from April. And then I thought about product review embargoes, which if you know me or you've listened to podcasts and stuff, I'm not a fan of embargoes. If you're unfamiliar with what an embargo is, basically it's when people are given a product in advance of its launch. They can test it out, they can make videos on it, and then they're all given a date and time that they're able to publish their videos, which is why sometimes you might like check your YouTube subscription box, and if you're subscribed to a lot of channels in the same niche or the same, you know, genre, you're gonna see a bunch of videos about the same thing on the same day at around the same time, because an embargo probably lifted. I'm not a fan of embargoes. I even have a whole thing on my website about how I don't do embargo videos. Even in rare times where I end up with a product somehow before it comes out, I'll purposely wait like a month or two before putting the video out. So what I thought was, I'm gonna make my encabulator video, and I'm just gonna hang out and wait for a day when there's an embargo release, and then I'm just gonna publish this video with a very vague title and a very vague thumbnail that could fit into like whatever is being talked about that day. So basically what I ended up having to do was scour eBay, Home Depot, and AutoZone for just random parts. And in my mind, I had this grand vision for what I wanted my encabulator to look like. But this is what I ended up with, which is, I'm still pretty proud of it. It'd be cool if it were a little bigger and had more stuff on it, but even this was enough work. So the body of it is like a PVC pipe housing. And then I got stuff like, these switches are so cool. These are for cars. I don't know. You put like your NOS booster or whatever, and then Fast and Furious up in here. There's like a handle from kitchen cabinets as a handle. I put on just some mounts on the end where I could put a polarizer to make it look something photo related. And then just switches and buttons, like there's a doorbell, there's some wires. It's pretty basic, but it was really hard. It was really hard to put all this stuff together. It required a lot of cutting and drilling and trying not to injure myself and figuring out how to paint stuff. And I wanted to make sure to not just paint it in colors that I like, but I also wanted to give it like a glossy sheen, so when it was under the lights in here and I was doing like B-roll shots of it, it would be shiny and look like a real product. So I had to make sure to like clear coat it afterwards. And it is, fun fact, the paint scheme is a reference to the Aquabats Battle Tram, Aquabats being my favorite band and the Battle Tram being a vehicle featured in their TV show, the Aquabats Super Show. Originally I wanted to put like a Raspberry Pi in here and make it light up and do stuff or make smoke come out of it, but that just got kind of beyond me. And the thing that really drove me crazy was when I was making this, it was literally not making the video, but as I was drilling all the things and putting it together, was the day that the Sony ZV-E10 was announced, and it was a huge embargo day, and I was like, oh, that would have been like the perfect day to release that video, but the video didn't exist yet because the thing didn't exist yet. So I finished the video the next day and thought, okay, there'll be something else real quick. And then there was nothing. There was like nothing coming out. Nothing interesting. My gauge is Twitter. So it's not just my subscription feed of like, hey, it seems like there's a lot of these videos, but it's when I start noticing people on Twitter saying, gee, did a new thing come out today? That's when I know like, okay, the embargo is so big that people are noticing it unintentionally. And now that's my chance to swoop in and encabulate them. So I made the video and I tried to make the most obnoxious thumbnail I could think of, so I'm sorry about that thumbnail. Holding the thing out, crazy YouTube face, exaggerated everything, which is funny because the video performed well, and I don't know if it's just because the video's goofy or it caught the wave of a product, or if it's because the super obnoxious YouTube thumbnail is actually super effective and that's why people do it. So then it was just one day in September, I woke up, was it the 21st? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't remember. It was the 21st of September that I woke up, and literally I was gonna go on a bike ride, and it just happened to be 6 a.m. my time, and I checked my phone before I left, and suddenly there was an iPhone 13 video. I was like, huh, and I refreshed my feed, and it just happened to be 6 a.m. was when the embargo must have lifted, and so every time I refreshed my feed, it was like, there were just more and more videos. And I was like, this is it. This is the time for the encabulator video. The thumbnail is very vague. It just says, this changes everything, which is a very hyperbolic statement. And so I just quickly changed the title to say like, forget the iPhone 13 cameras. The photo encabulator is here, and published it and then went on my bike ride. It just made me giggle to be a part of this weird history of this thing, this inside joke that's been going around for almost a century at this point. And I thought if I could make a couple people laugh along the way, that'd be really fun. And I loved the responses of like, what is this? What did I just watch? Is this serious? I felt bad for people who felt like they were not understanding something and they were trying to figure it out, because it's gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. There were a lot of people asking how many takes it took, and actually not that many. And that was surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing, which did something. And trust me, anyone in the AV world will appreciate the difficulty of noobing together a regurgitative Purwell and a regurgitative supermative Wendell sprocket. That is, until it was found that the use of anhydrous nangling pins allowed for the cryptonastic bowling pins to be fitted in something. But all that I had to do, so I didn't use a teleprompter, I had the script up on my monitor, which was right next to the camera, and I would just remember like the first part of a line, and so I could say like blah 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 blah, and then as soon as I got to the part I couldn't remember, I could just look over and read the rest. And then in my mind, I knew as soon as I took my eyes off the camera, I would cover that up with B-roll clips. So I was trying to be very strategic with when I was looking directly into the camera lens versus when I was looking away, and knowing that anytime I wasn't looking at the camera, I was gonna cover it with B-roll. Those earlier attempts to construct a sufficiently robust spiral commutator failed largely because of lack of appreciation for the large quasi-piastic stresses in the gremlin studs, which were specifically designed to hold the Roffet bars to the spamo sensor. I also set up a second angle here, so that way even though it wasn't done in one take like Bud Haggart's amazing performance, cutting between the two cameras and cutting to B-roll clips made it feel very fluid, like it was pretty much one take. And that's pretty much it. And it came together, and I edited it, and I made the thing, and I tried to do B-roll, which has a lot of stupid stuff, just like putting in like LEDs and wires, and it's like the stupidest, it's just stupid. But it's funny, and I like stupid things that are funny, and that was the point of that video, and that's the story behind that video, and I know that that is different from the stuff that I normally make, but hopefully you can kind of appreciate at least why I thought that was funny. Sometimes you just gotta have fun and do things that are goofy, and I'm really appreciative that for the most part, even though that's one of my most disliked videos, a lot of people actually really liked it and were super supportive and in on the joke, and people were writing comments that are full of jargon, and it's like, that was really fun, and I had a great time. So that's the story of my Deluxe photo encabulator, which has its origins all the way back in 1944. Maybe in the future, I don't know, 2022, maybe it'll be like Deluxe photo encabulator 2.0. Only time will tell, because Tom will not tell in time. Thank you to everyone who supports my channel. I couldn't do ridiculous things like this without your support, and hopefully things like this don't make you want to withdraw your support, because that would be awful. So thank you, super appreciate it. If you haven't checked out the actual encabulator video and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, definitely take some time to check that out. And check out the links in the description to the previous videos and the original article and all that fun stuff too.